Welcome to the tipping point. We're back after months and months of hiatus. Stephen Platinum, Larry Goodman, joined by Jeremy York and our special guest tonight, the Black Cloud, the killer weight, Joe Black. Welcome to the tipping point, Joe.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Good to see you, Joe. You look great. You look great.
Thank you. I've been drinking a lot of water.
Yeah, I got to start doing that.
Yeah, me too.
I was recently talking to Matt Hankins, and it reminded me of the year that you dominated the awards and he dominated the awards. I think it was one of the best years Georgia wrestling has had in recent memory. And both of you said a similar thing in your acceptance speeches, Joe, and it really, really took me. And it was this idea that both of you were really happy to win, but that you were both ready for sort of the next generation to sort of pick up the ball, that you didn't want this thing where you dominated the awards year after year after year. You wanted a thing where other people had sort of picked up the mantle and kind of taken over. Do you feel, I mean, obviously you're going to be a leading contender for Wrestler of the Year every year. But do you feel like that has happened, or do you feel like we're still waiting for Georgia wrestling to be able to, if not replace people like you and Matt Hankins, at least have like a strong contingent of people who are kind of leading the way in various categories? How do you feel the state of Georgia wrestling is right now?
I feel like it's almost two-sided. I feel like there
Mm,
are very strong contenders to step up to the plate, run that gauntlet, and prove that they're the best of the best and they can stand the test of time, location, non-barring. And then I also feel like it's bloated, the region. Like everybody, whether it's the Nightmare Factory, WWA 4,
yeah.
PCW, there are a lot of guys being pumped out now, a lot of girls being pumped out. And now it seems like it's more of a quantity over quality thing. And that's not a shot at anybody. I think Lev is doing a great job. Hunter James is doing a great job. There's a young kid named JT Paradox, Justin McKenzie, DRP. There are a lot of names of guys who have, picked with the ball and they run with it. But I feel like, there's still because if that adage was true and that the young
Yeah.
generations were taking over, I wouldn't have been nominated. I shouldn't have been nominated. But here we are again. So I mean, I see both sides of it. There will be some strong cases, I'm sure, once people hear this. But in my opinion, I feel like a few have really picked it up and ran with it, and a few are just kind of resting on their laurels, waiting for someone to pass them the ball rather than forcing the fumble. So, you know,
Right on. Yeah.
So when you look at your the year you've had in 25, what stands out to you as I mean, you've had a lot of obviously a lot of great matches and a lot of moments, great moments. What really stands out to you about the year you've had?
I think it's 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 a two-part question or answer. Lev, to be able to be a part of Lev being seen as more than just a literal doormat at a Southern Honor show, Lev being seen as more than just a lackey for some group in the NWA, Lev being seen as what he should be seen as, a great worker, someone that's coming into his own. He's not trying to be Raven as much anymore. He's not trying to be Jimmy Rave as much anymore. He's starting to get comfortable in his own skin. So seeing that transition
Mm,
from the match we had in February to the match we had in November, it was night and day. And also, I mean, it's really cool. And I'll allow the listeners a peek behind the curtain. When AJ Styles showed up in Southern Honor, I knew he was coming because I was told. But for him to walk up to me and Lev and say, "Okay, what do you guys have?" and for him to listen to the entire match, add what he thought was cool, took out what he thought was a little bit too much. The curtain call was not planned. So my reaction to hearing his music was the same as everybody else's. AJ
Mm.
has been one of my chief influences starting out. I had a tryout match before SmackDown, and I want to say 2017, and it was me and JD Drake, and he came down the bleachers from where he was sitting with his son, and he pulled me and JD to the side and gave us some games, so to speak, and he remembered that. So that it was a cool full circle moment, and I don't think I'll ever have a moment quite like that. So yeah, for me, that was the perfect way to encapsulate everything that 2025 brought was to get that acknowledgement.
Mm.
Well, to stay on that, you brought up Lev. You got two great matches with him last year. You got another one. You got part three of the last 18 months, I guess, coming up this Saturday. What have you learned about facing him? As you said, he is evolving. What have you learned that you're gonna try to use this weekend?
Oh, nothing. I'm not changing my game for anything. Michael Jordan never changed his game up. Kobe Bryant never changed their game up. They just acclimated to whoever they're in the arena with, but their game is still the same. My game will always be the same. It doesn't matter if it's Alexander Lev, Eddie Kingston, ACH. I'm not going to change what makes me me. But what I will do is now that the old folks when I was growing up had a term or a way of saying it. He's starting to smell himself. So now he has that confidence to go behind all of the accolades he's starting to get. So now I feel like we're going to see who Alexander Lev really is. He's not tentative anymore. He knows I beat this guy before. I got a curtain call from AJ Styles. I'm feeling myself a little bit. So I might have to change up, how hard I hit him because I will admit sometimes I pull my punches because I love the kid like a little brother. So now the
Mm-hmm.
goal is to knock the shit out of him and maybe, humble him a little bit. But other than
Mm.
that, I'm going to do what I always do.
I love that you use the phrase humble when it comes to Lev. I, as somebody who's more and more removed from the Georgia scene, I do always kind of have like a general observation about the scene. And my general observation, Joe, and of course, don't be afraid to correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it was 2025 was a year that people got humbled, not necessarily knocked down from where they thought they were to where they really were, but sometimes the humbling took a very different form. So, like for example, I felt like Gary Lamb, who's always like a major player on the scene, whether he wants to be or not. I think he went through a humbling of a sort. I don't think he changed from being Gary Lamb, but I think he got a sense of perspective, for example. Whereas other people just got flat out humbled and knocked down a peg or two. Do you think that that is accurate, or am I just kind of creating my own narrative and seeing it through that lens, if that makes sense?
That is 100% accurate.
Mm.
100%. I'm not going to go and name any names, but there have been some former, wrestlers of the year who you don't even see anymore.
Oh,
You don't
wow.
really see on the scene. You don't see at the bigger shows. There have been a couple of guys who, thought that, perhaps they were bigger than the scene. And they tried to make the scene about them, and then the scene kind of chewed them up and spit them out. So
Ooh.
I really feel like there's been a lot of humbling done, and that's why there's been such an influx of these younger guys coming into their own, because a lot of the OGs, so to speak, a lot of the guys who were standing on top, they got knocked down a peg or two, and they never really recovered. So it was a mass humbling in 2025. And I mean, perhaps that's what the scene needed.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed this year, Joe, is you wrestled for so many different promotions around Georgia. I mean, you spanned the state. I know you were also over in North Carolina. Was that something consciously you wanted to do, was to get around to a lot of different places this year?
Oh yeah. I feel like, and I've said it, I feel like Georgia has been spoiled. I go up to North Carolina and there's a collaboration in North Carolina. All the promotions They collaborate. They use each other's champions. They use each other's venues. They collaborate with when they bring in names. There's a real collaborative effort. Nobody is too big for the scene up there. And then
Mm.
you come down to Georgia, and it's dog eat dog. And you got certain promotions like Viral who are an island to themselves, and rightfully so. Then you got other promotions that are just still, vying for a top spot when really there is no top spot. It's the independents. And we could get so much more traction if everybody was working together. So to go up to North Carolina and see that is refreshing. To be a part of that is even more refreshing. I mean, the fact that Newborn Wrestling, where I do a lot of my work, was pretty much created on the back of something I created was cool to see. To be able to main event in the mall that I grew up shopping at was, pretty cool to do.
Mm.
I'm about to add Tennessee to the itinerary. I wrestled. I'm in Alabama heavy nowadays, and I also got some overseas things that I'm working to make happen now without jinxing myself. So if I can limit my time in Georgia completely, if I can just like not wrestle in Georgia, I would not wrestle in Georgia. But
Mm.
there are a lot of younger guys that want to match with me, and there are a lot of promotions that I do feel a kinship with. I won't be at the next Southern Honor show, for example, and I might not be at the one after that. It's no sour grapes with them, but it's kind of like when you've been doing something for so long, you get stale, you get stagnant, you get static, and I don't want that. I want to be able to keep changing and keep adapting and getting better. I don't want to reach a cap, and I feel like I've reached my cap in Georgia. So that's why I've been traveling a lot more and bringing what I've learned in my travels to the guys that want to learn. And a lot of those guys seem to be centrally in Alabama. I guess a lot of guys in Georgia feel like they already know everything, so I don't have any words for them. So the Alabama kids definitely are receptive, and they're very grateful, as well as the North Carolina kids. I just feel like there's some lost in translation in Georgia. I don't know what it is, and I'm not shitting on the scene. I'm a part of it, but I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Well, since you did travel around to so much of the state, and you're actually not the first person to say that about the Carolinas either. I find it great that you noticed that as well. Um, as far as the landscape of the state of Georgia, what did you kind of see last year in traveling around everywhere, and what kind of movements were you seeing?
Man, in North Carolina, everybody realizes that unless you are signed, you're making big money. There's no reason to really be dog eat dog and cutthroat. I know it's a carny thing to do. This is my
Yeah.
circus. This is my carnival. You stay over there with yours. But I mean, an elephant's an elephant, and a clown is a clown. Why not just work together? Pull your clowns together and make a bigger circus. Be the Ringling Brothers instead of just some traveling shit circus that no one's going to go to. So in North Carolina, everybody works together for a goal of let's make the Carolinas bigger. Deadlock Pro is shutting down, so that's creating a void, and a lot of these groups are coming together to create something to fill that void. The guy that runs the mall shows, we're about to be in Vegas. He's working on Nashville, Tennessee. And he's bringing a lot of the Carolina guys along with him. So to see something like that, and then to get to Georgia where, you got Little Dick syndrome, and these guys want to have the best, biggest, whatever show, and their means of doing it is cutting somebody else's Achilles tendon, or undercut somebody else, or to shit on somebody else, or to create these pseudonyms and these fake Facebook profiles to shit on somebody else. I just feel like it's very immature. It's very schoolyard. It's very, for lack of better term, it's very bitch made. And it just goes to show that, and I've told some guys in Georgia, there are other states that laugh at Georgia because they see the drama. They see what's posted on Trash Bag Wrestlers that people are arguing about. They see all the infighting, and I get the message about it, or Huck will get the message about it because we're both North Carolina guys, or Murder will get the message about it. He's a North Carolina guy too. And it's just like, Georgia should be the top of the heap.
Yeah.
But instead, guys are standing on top of the heap of trash and setting in the flame and arguing about who can jump off to save themselves. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I wonder, Joe, not to put too much on the awards, but we're in the midst of the awards and all of that. I wonder if that's the flip side of the negative side of the awards getting prominence. Not that it's the awards' fault necessarily, but the attitude is competitive when it's not necessary versus collaborative, like you said, North Carolina is. I wonder what that's going to take to change. Is it going to have to just simply be um, the case where a lot of the old guard just kind of gets swept out? Often that's when societies change. That's when groups of people change. That's when anything changes, is when the older generation tends to move out of there and you get younger cats with a different mindset who move in. To me, it's this aspect of Georgia wrestling where guys are cutting each other's throat is so bizarre to me because again, most of the shows use the same people. So it's not like the old school where it was like, if you wrestle for me, you can't wrestle for anybody else. I think you would get laughed out of the building if you said that now. But there is this definite cutthroat aspect when all the signs of true collaboration work really well. When AWE needs a home and Southern Honor helps them have one, everybody wins. When Gary Lamb and Matt Griffin get over whatever bullshit they were experiencing and work together, everybody wins. What do you think the solution is? Is it as simple as the old guard moves out? Is it just people kind of give up this notion to be? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And I guess you're so smart. Do you have any thoughts on how that can change in Georgia?
A lot of the old heads need to realize that their time is up, and
Yeah.
now their time is pretty much should be dedicated towards helping these younger guys who have a chance. I'm not ashamed or afraid to admit that I will never put pen to paper. I will never get signed. And instead of me being bitter about that and protecting an imaginary spot that really doesn't exist, how can I take what I've learned in 18 years and how can I invest that in younger talent? Um, and that's what I've done with Alexander Lev. I've taken Justin McKenzie under my wing, DRP. There's a young kid named Julian that I'm sure Larry is familiar with from Pro South that I'm trying to help. So I don't want to hold on to the spot. I want to go out there and put over a young kid like Justin McKenzie. I want to go out there and put over a young kid like AJ Black. I don't want to give them the match where I'm like, I'm trying to protect my spot, brother. I want to give them the match that says, I want you to make them forget about me. My goal is to be so great that eventually I'm forgotten about because someone took whatever made me great and added their own flourish to it. That's a legacy for me. I don't need my name remembered through the annals of history. But if I can look on Raw and say, Javon Evans, he learned a little bit from me. Jackson Drake, he learned a little bit from me. Justin McKenzie will be there one day. He learned a little bit from me. I'm good with that. A lot of the older heads need to realize your run is up. The spot you're protecting does not exist. Why don't you help these young guys who have, good knees and who have the age and the youth to take it and go somewhere? That's my whole goal. So maybe it just needs to be one of those moments of rumination where a lot of guys realize my goal now is to proliferate information. That's it.
Yeah.
Stop protecting a spot. It does not exist. Stop keeping someone for being great because you never were great. The true mark of greatness is what you can inspire in the generations to come after you, not what you can do for yourself. So if more guys adopted that, I feel like the scene would be much better. And in North Carolina, there's a lot of the old heads me and Huck came up under, and that's what they're doing now. They created promotions to help these guys get better. They're not champions of these promotions. They don't even wrestle. They don't put themselves in front of the camera. Their whole goal is, I'm going to start this promotion to help shine some light on these guys. And I feel like Georgia needs a lot more of that.
Mm.
Joe, one of the things was going to ask you about coming into this interview was that, it surprised me. I mean, I knew you always had an association with Pro South through the years, but what surprised me is that you came there and then came back, and then became a regular there over this last part of the year. But I think in what you've already said, you've kind of answered why when you talk about people like Justin McKenzie, AJ Black, Julian Balderas, and the role you have there with those younger guys.
Yeah, there's something they reinvigorated, my passion for this, seeing their passion. And Ace Haven has, for the second time, has played a party to reinvigorating some of that old spark. The first time is when he gave me wrestling back during the pandemic. And the second time is being able to come in and see all these young guys and they're hungry, they're passionate to see them, do this seminar with Mike Quackenbush. And they're not just sitting there, they're listening to the dissemination of information. They're asking questions. The whole ride, when we picked up Quackenbush from the airport, Justin McKenzie is asking questions the whole ride. And just to see that, for me, it inspires me. It lets me know there are still those out there who want to learn, who want to get better, and they're going through the right channels to do it. So Pro South, for me, I feel like Ace and Amy are running something really special. And if I can help, at all to help get more eyes on them or to bring more acknowledgement to that, if I can use my experience to help those younger guys there break out, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Well, are there places that are out there? People always ask what opponents you want to go against, maybe, but are there places out there that you would love to get booked that you haven't gotten booked or just haven't reached out to see if they would bring you in?
Just Pro Wrestling Noah. I'm not really, to me, I've done the PWXs. I worked for Omega. I got booked by Matt Hardy when I worked for Omega. I've wrestled AMLs. I've done all the big shows in Georgia, Tennessee, and that's great. And Indy is an indie. If I got booked at GCW tomorrow, I wouldn't treat it any different than I treated PWX or Southern Honor. It's just an indie to me. So Pro Wrestling Noah has always been the goal, not WWE, not Ring of Honor. It's always been Noah because all my wrestling heroes, they wrestled in Noah. They got their lumps in Noah. They became legends in Noah. So I have a guy that I know from North Carolina that was trained by George South and Caprice Coleman named Noel, who's a regular in Noah. And to see what he's been able to create over there, that's the only place that I really would hang my hat on and say, I got to work there. I don't think there's anything else left for me to do in the States. Everything that's left for my career, however many years I have left, is to be done overseas. So that's the only goal right now for me.
Joe, I'm gonna ask a question that's probably mostly unrelated to wrestling when it comes to you. What's something that Joe Black from, let's say, 10 years ago would be really surprised about you now? Is there some kind of knowledge that you've gained? I've said for years that you're very intelligent, but I think that there's a different thing going on with you where there's intelligence and there's wisdom. And I think you're not only intelligent, which was the case the first time I said it years and years ago, but I think there's a wisdom to you now as well, which to me is the application of knowledge in order to kind of get the best effect for yourself, or even if you're advising others. What's something that you would be shocked about, the you from 10 years ago looking at the you now? What's something that completely surprises you about you? I know that's a difficult question, but
the first thing is that I'm still doing this. When I started, I gave myself 10 years. But to see that, I got as far as I got, and it was just from me being me. I didn't kiss anybody's ass to get where I got. I wasn't waiting for handouts. Everything that I have, or the perception of everything that I have, has been born from me showing and proving, going out there and, proving, any work that I've done with Carino or Booker T has been from something that they seen and they wanted to help cultivate. Booker T saw a best of 5 series with Chip Day and said, I need that on my show. Steve Carino, I just sent him a resume and his response was, that's the best wrestling resume I've ever gotten. I'm gonna give you a spot just for that. And then going out there from that, to him getting me a match with Adam Cole, who at the time was the Ring of Honor World Champion.
Yeah.
You know, I've had so many cool things that I never thought I'd be able to do. I wrestled in a WWE ring. It may not have been on primetime television, but I've been in the ring. I've had a tryout. You know, I got complimented on my physique by Shane McMahon, which I marked out for. You know, I've had so many cool moments. So I think the only thing that me from a decade ago would not believe is that I've had, I don't want to use the word prominence, but I've had such a career to where I can literally quit at any time and be like, I've done everything that I need to do. I've got to be under the learning tree of guys I grew up idolizing. You know, I got compared to guys that I grew up idolizing, watching their work. And I inspired a few guys along the way with a pair of wooden beads around my neck, to the point where now there's a guy that I never met,
Yeah,
that's wearing them on either SmackDown or Raw, wherever he gets drafted. And I'm pretty sure Steve Corino gave him a little nudge, hint about him, you know, which is cool.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
it's just, I never thought I'd make it this far doing it my way. You know, knowledge itself is a destructive power, especially in this industry where everybody wants to be the proverbial Geppetto, and they just want us to be marionettes on their threads of fate. And for
yeah,
me,
absolute. I guess.
yeah,
Hmm.
I just couldn't consign to that. And I've had this discussion with Cedric and Eric Royal that Eric used to joke. He's like, I don't think you're going to have a long career because you're very rebellious and outspoken, but I've had a pretty fruitful career. And yeah, I would just be shocked I'm still here and I'm held in such high esteem.
I think, I mean, not to take somebody else's spot for a question, but I think it's important. Something that I was a big advocate of when I was talking about wrestling in the state of Georgia was I would the everybody's got pet peeves about wrestling, and one of mine was whenever this question of would you rather have somebody that was talented but hard to deal with, or would you rather have somebody who listened but maybe didn't have the biggest upside? And everybody in wrestling that I knew would say, "Oh, I want that guy who will listen." And it always made me throw up in my mouth. Like I will till the day I die, I will always be an advocate. And this is everywhere in anything. This includes my children and the rest of it. Give me somebody who's got a viewpoint and give me competence over compliance any day of the week. I don't know when wrestling got so pussified that they were afraid of what it takes to be a star or what it takes to be somebody who is proficient. I assure you, it has nothing to do with compliance.
Nope.
What we're doing is a weird combination of art and science and sport and entertainment. It's this weird collaboration of stuff that I assure you, the talent level has nothing to do with how quote unquote fake humble you are and how you listen, and nothing to do with it. I'm
Nope.
always compelled by the ones that seem to be quote unquote out of pocket. Even if you look at people on the scene that aren't wrestlers, Larry Goodman is the epitome of a guy who I think um, can still be, you can be kind and still have kind of a fuck you attitude. I think that's why Larry's thing works. I I think underneath the surface of I'm an older cat who knows how to deal with people and who doesn't really have that big of an ego about it, there is also a kind of a fuck you about Larry that I think carries it through. And Joe, I just got to say, I mean, as much as this might come across as kissing your ass, I would rather win if I was wrestling right now. I would want you putting that necklace around my neck more than any fucking title from any promotion. There's like an ethos to it. There's meaning to it. I mean, when Vince Russo said, and he got shit for it, right? It's like a belt is just a prop. He wasn't wrong. It's just that he doesn't get to say things like that in most people's eyes. But it doesn't mean he was wrong. It is just a prop. And the only value is the value that we give to things, right? Money doesn't exist, right, per se. But if we all decide that it has a value, then it has a value. And I'm so happy that you not only say the thing of, oh, I'm supposed to be out of pocket, but like whatever, but you epitomize it, right? You go into a place like you're an intimidating presence. I think especially if people don't know you, and we've seen weird reactions to it. I think a lot of like, I mean, we didn't say his name, but I'll say his name, like Skrilla the Great. I mean, that's a guy that could have been something really special. Um, he, in some ways, he maxed out his potential, but at the end of the day, I think, you know, he's a case of he gets in his own way, combined with some people see him as out of pocket, and maybe he is. But I think if the fucking juice was worth the squeeze with him, it would have been a different story. That's the ultimate underlying thing is for Joe Black, is the juice worth the squeeze? And the answer is absolutely, unless you're a bitch and you don't like being intimidated, or you don't like having to, that collaborates in a tough word, man. I think in the Carolinas, maybe there's just a maturity that took place, and some of the guys went, we saw what happened with PWX. We saw these groups that rode high, and they always got into weird fights, and Viral is starting this billboard and all this other nonsense that we used to talk about. And those guys, for the most part, just came to the conclusion of like, we don't have the resources for this. I think COVID should have taught everybody that lesson. We don't have the resources for this. At the end of the day, I'll say it a million times. And then, Joe, I just want you to sort of reflect on this idea of competence versus compliance. But it's not amazing to me that wrestling isn't bigger. I've said it since I started wrestling. It's amazing that wrestling exists at all. And I think we're seeing the vulnerability with the WWE. They make more money not doing jack shit than we ever thought possible in wrestling. The economics of wrestling are completely different than they were before. Yet, I don't think there's anybody rational who would say, but pro wrestling on the national scene is better than it's ever been. The opposite. It's more compliant than it's ever been. There is not a hint of rebellion in the WWE, and I think that's one of the most vomit-inducing things about it. I like the fact that they have no problems. That even a guy like CM Punk seems to be completely compliant, and they don't understand that makes him as unappealing as he's ever been. So Joe, if you could, because young cats believe in you, man, and as well they should. Talk about this competence. Maybe competence isn't even the right word, but I liked it because they had two C's. It was easy to remember. But compliance versus competence, because yeah, you want to attend the right things, and you want to be like when guys like Rudy Gonzalez and shit are just like, yeah, give me a guy who will listen and I can mold him. This bullshit idea of the guy from on high with all this knowledge is going to mold these guys. I never was about molding these cats. I was about like, I always made it akin, just like my kids. I treat the same way I treat my kids. And I think my kids have done pretty fucking good, right? It's my job was to not make them a version of me or even a better version of me. My job was to teach them how to use the fucking force. And then they were going to use the force however they're going to use the fucking force.
Yeah.
And if sometimes that meant they were a Sith, so fucking be it. They will figure it out and hopefully get on a path of positivity. But at the end of the day, my job was to not make sure that they were fucking, eating their breakfast at this time and then brushing their teeth. Like, that's not what pro wrestling is to me. So being this guy that you are that's so smart and wise, talk about competence versus compliance, please, just for a little while.
Okay, so firstly, I feel like since Skrilla was brought up, I feel like the thing with Skrilla was he understood to some degree how the scene in Georgia was.
Yeah,
And he tried to create him a version of himself that would be able to deal with how the scene in Georgia was. And I feel like him trying to create that version of himself took away from the version of himself that did win Wrestler of the Year, did win Feud of the Year, whatever. Um, and he shouldn't have had to try to turn himself into a version of anything. He should have just been able to say, okay, I've got this. Now it's time to prove, I'm already that person.
yes.
And Georgia has a bad habit of making people think like that. And I know that to be true because there was a point in time I thought like that. And it took Murder One to say, I'm not booking you against Eddie Kingston and Simon Gotch and Jimmy Jacobs off of a whim. I don't want you to try to be like me or Jimmy Rave. I want you to be you, and I feel like the thing with no rebels, I don't trust any industry that there's not a rebellious quality to, because then that, as you
Absolutely.
said, everybody is getting along to go along. They're afraid, and I don't like the cowardly in art. There's no place for a coward. There's no
Here.
place for compliance in art because now you're uniform. Now you're not a painter. You're just using AI to create something and
Yeah.
calling it art. Um, I always use Dennis Rodman as an example. Rodman did
Mm,
not listen to Phil Jackson. It would take Michael Jordan to physically yoke up Dennis Rodman to pull him away from someone. And Rodman still didn't really listen, but he had enough respect for Mike being the best that he would begrudgingly listen to Mike. But he was still coloring his hair crazy colors. The day before important games, he was on all night vendors. Dennis Rodman was always going to be Dennis Rodman. And there are no Rodmans. There are a bunch of guys trying to be Scottie Pippen. And there's nothing wrong with Scottie Pippen. But you don't get to be MJ being Scottie Pippen. You don't get to be talked about through the annals of history playing it
yeah.
safe. Now, when everybody talks about Scottie Pippen, they talk about the sour grapes. They talk about how he was better
Right.
than Jordan in his own words. They don't talk about his stats. So now he's pretty much killed his own legacy. But Dennis Rodman will always be Dennis Rodman. Michael Jordan will always be the GOAT, regardless of what era you think is the best. You know, and then as an interesting aside of that, LeBron James has scored more points than anybody else, but no one sees him as that guy. He's at the top of the heat of the NBA, but no one sees him as that guy. And when I look at WWE, I see a bunch of LeBron James. I see no Michael Jordan. I see no Allen
No.
Iverson. I see no Patrick Ewing, no Dennis Rodman, no Charles Barkley. Hell, I don't even see a Tony Kukoc. I don't see Mavericks. I don't see guys who would set fire to a building just to keep themselves warm. The hell if it has, indoor heating. I don't see that quality. I'm a CM Punk guy. I love CM Punk, but I don't see CM Punk when I watch WWE. I see Phil Brooks, and there's nothing wrong with that. Make your money.
Right.
You have nothing to prove. You're one of those guys, but to me, there has to be some sort of rebellion when it comes to art because art is subjective. What I may consider to be art, you may consider to be a pile of shit, and that's great. But now instead of people saying, "Well, I know that's your version of art," I think it's a pile of shit. Now everybody's like, "I respect your art," and I think you love it. I really don't think that at all. And I'm the type of person, if I see a match that I get sent for critique, I'll tell them, "Hey, I think this is shit." But I'm not just going to tear you down. Let me build
Right.
you back up. Let me tell you why I feel like it's not good. And because of that, a lot of guys don't come to me, but that's fine. I know I got that quality from William Huckabee. There's been matches that I sent him that I thought was dope, and he's like, no, it looks good stylistically, but the mechanics aren't there. You could build a car, but if it doesn't have a fucking motor, what's the point of the car? It look good, and it took that for me to see, okay,
Oh,
let me go under the hood before I worry about the khaki looks like. So it's good to be compliant to a degree. When you go to your 9 to 5, be compliant there because you need to pay your bills. But when it comes to pro wrestling, stop being a bitch and be you.
yeah.
Don't be afraid to put your foot down. There are 50 million indies anywhere, and these guys act like, well, I can't say this. I might get kicked out of the locker room at this. Who cares? I feel like the scene will be better if guys were able to say,
Carly Bravo is a prime example of what I'm saying. Alex Kane is a prime example of what I'm saying. They are unabashedly themselves. They don't give a fuck who listens, who agrees. Carly Bravo is going to be Carly Bravo. Alex Kane is going to be Alex. So if you're a younger guy listening to this, look at what they post and look at how they carry themselves. Alex Kane walks into a locker
Yes.
room like he is the fucking shit, and he's above reproach. And a lot of guys don't like that. I see the look on their face. I love it.
I
Same with
love it.
Carly. Why
When
would Carly not feel like a superstar? If you don't
I
carry
fucking love
yourself,
it.
yeah, if you don't carry
When
yourself like what you're trying to be, you will never be that.
when Alex Kane wrote the thing about what is this bullshit of like we're supposed to dress a certain way coming
Yeah,
into the locker room, and he
yeah.
was like, and I was like, I fucking love it. I fucking love it. Like Joe's a great example, right? I remember years ago, my thing was like, what is Joe's vibe? And I went Bruiser Brody, which is about as big a compliment coming from me as I can possibly make on a comparison. And I thought, where's our fucking Bruiser Brodies now? Right? Where's the guy that's like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. I think like this idea that you're never supposed to be uncomfortable. It's just foolish. I'm not saying get involved in every stupid fucking little thing. Like if you're spending an inordinate amount of time going to war with trash bag wrestlers, you're wasting your resources. At the same time, that kind of shit starting bullshit is it's a part of wrestling, right? At the end of the day, I would be happier being a wrestler that kind of threw their weight around a little bit. At the end of the day, it's all about the show and collaborating and all that, of course. But my God, don't I want to deal with somebody that makes me a little nervous as a booker? I want somebody that can create magic potentially. And let me tell you, compliance is not magical.
No, I mean, what about the outlaw mentality? Is there room for an outlaw mentality? There was a
Yeah,
business built on outlaws, but is that still, there's got to be room for that now.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, part of the problem is I think who are the role models for these cats nationally? You know who I would admire if I was a young guy? Sorry, somebody's about to walk by. Go ahead.
Sorry, man.
No, you're good. It's like
Hi,
who would
folks.
I want? You know who I want who would be a hero of mine, but you never hear the young cats talk about him, is John fucking Moxley. That's not the career you want. The guy who literally broke every rule. He's a death match guy. He was this. Oh, he did this match where the explosion didn't happen right. It doesn't matter. That guy's remained in the main event, put guys over, wrestled his way, prove that you didn't have to be in the WWE and have the primary part of your career there to matter. He's carried AEW through numerous problems that they had. Punk is gone. Fine. I'm going to help us out and help us get there. Right? People debate about John Moxley all the time, but you know what nobody says? John Moxley ain't shit. If I was a young wrestler, I would look at that guy and be inspired. My God, that guy does whatever the fuck he wants. Matt Cardona is a guy I would look at.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm gonna throw this to you, and I probably shouldn't open up this can of worms. And Larry, and I'm sorry that I am, but I think what's underlying this idea about compliance and the thing that we're not talking about is I think there is a racial component. I'm not saying it's necessarily 100%, but when you look at the guys that Joe's talking about, Alex Kane, Harley Bravo, himself, I think there's kind of a bombacity and an audacity to being a black wrestler that makes society in general, but the wrestling world in particular, nervous on a level that we're not going to talk about because we don't want to open that can of worms, right? And in the WWE, when they keep talking about we're gonna, yeah, there was some crazy thing that somebody put up online recently, and it looks like it's true that like the last time a black wrestler won a prominent match on a PLE, it was like literally years ago. Um, unless you count The Rock in a tag match or some nonsense like that, right? There's, I think there's this idea that when people think of people who are like more of a free spirit in wrestling, it often comes with a color on your skin. And that also is sort of like a code for we don't want that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just a gut feeling that I have. If
Hey, so
anybody wants to speak on
I
that.
want to hear what Joe has to say about this, but what I was thinking about as we're talking on bringing it down to the local level, it's why I'm drawn to A4 and the wrestlers that come out of A4 is there's just a certain we don't give a fuck more freedom sort of to what to the way they do
Yeah.
things, you know. I mean, it's attractive to me. What do you think, Joe?
It was Booker T that put me on the path of, because when I came into reality of wrestling, I was trying to be what I felt like he wanted me to be. And I had my first match there. He put me over in the meeting after the show. He pulled me aside. And at the time, I was known as Joseph Agal because I was doing work with Ring of Honor. Chris Daniels said, hey, man, Joe Black, Brad Pitt, you got to think of another name. You're Haitian. You know how T'Challa is T'Challa and how the spelling, pops out. So you say you should use your lineage to think of something like that. So this was the first day of the Ring of Honor camp. He said, when you get back here tomorrow, make sure you have a name. So me being a younger guy, I thought, maybe this means I have a job, So I came up with Joseph Agal. Agal is the Haitian Loa of the storm. I was the black cloud. I made it connect. Carino hated it, but he understood it. So when I went to reality of wrestling, I was Joe Agal. And Booker pulled me to the side and he said, I don't know who this Agal guy is, but you're Joe Black. When I seen your match with that one guy, you were Joe Black. He was like, I don't know who told you to change who you are. He said, but change back. He said, because I don't want Joe Agal, I want Joe Black. So after that, I killed the name. And it's like, if this is coming from a two-time Hall of Famer, a guy that I grew up idolizing and worshiping, I'm going to run with that. I feel like a lot of black wrestlers are scared of being regarded as uppity.
Mm.
A lot of black wrestlers are scared of the stigma of being that outspoken talent, because we got to be a part of the get along gang. The adage is it's harder for us, so we have to work harder. Fuck that. I'm gonna work the way I need to work, and I'm gonna be who I need to be able to look in the mirror at the end of the night and say I didn't sell out. Be able to look at my face in the mirror and say I still see my soul. That was more important to me than however much money that they could be offered. I'm from the learning tree of a New Jack, of a Murder One, who are unabashedly proud black men. So why would I be anything different? So there is a very distinct I don't give a fuck quality about guys like us. I call it the thug life mentality. Tupac was not the best rapper. He was not the best lyricist, but he had that bombastic attitude that people still try to emulate 30 plus years later. There's no one trying to be like Biggie, but there's still people trying to be like Tupac because he represented a counterculture within a culture. And for other black athletes, I'm not saying to throw caution to the wind and just be, what, because if that's not you, that's not you. But for me, I'm sure I would have had a contract if I was easier to go along, get along. A story not everybody knows. I was supposed to be in the top prospect tournament of Ring of Honor. I didn't have to pay for the Ring of Honor camp. I got in under Steve's suggestion and my match with Adam Cole. I wowed everybody at the 2-day camp. I was getting paid for dark matches, and I mean, I was getting checks with Sinclair broadcasting on them. I shared, a locker room with Juice and Thunder Liger. This is something that a lot of guys can't say, but because Carino opted to get signed with NXT, my position in the tournament was given to John Skyler. And my big match at center stage, whether it was me, Corey Hollis, and Skyler versus the Kingdom, I get taken out in the first 30 seconds of the match. I take the power bomb to the floor. That's it. And
Yeah, yeah.
This is front of AWE people who have seen me just wrestle Eddie Kingston or whoever and have an epic. And now I'm laying on the floor for an 8-minute match. And I was mad as fuck. And then I walked down the stairs. No one even no ref, no one came to retrieve me from the floor. I had to crawl down one of those side steps.
Oh my God.
And the first face I saw was Shane Taylor and Keith Lee. And Shane said, no one's going to remember that match. They're going to remember that bump.
He said, "You're angry as fuck." He said, "Keep it. Don't get rid of it. Remember how this moment felt and use that as fuel." And I have been ever since.
Mm,
The way I talk, I used to try to talk differently because I felt like I can't be a Nick Bockwinkel type of talker and look the way that I do. And it was Dusty Rhodes who said, "Baby, you be who you are. And if that's how you speak, then that's how you always don't compromise. Don't give them nothing else other than who you are." And ever since then, I said, you know what? I'm going to be here. So I look the way I do. I hit guys the way I hit, and I'm going to speak like a Shakespearean sonnet with everything that I say. So if you're
yeah.
like watching me, be you. Like whoever you are, exemplify that in everything you do.
Well, whether it's in wrestling or even I think I'd be more interested to know outside of wrestling who are some people that not just influence the person you become, but kind of help shape and help mold the Joe Black that we're talking to right now.
Shane Helms, when I started with CWF Mid Atlantic, it was 2008. I think Shane was getting ready for his cruiserweight run. Um, and he was coming into CWF and he was working with Royal, who I started out with. And he was one of the first guys to, because I remember going up to him and saying, "Hey, I'm a small guy." Because he said, "Why aren't you training? Why you just help with the ring? Why aren't you in the ring?" And I said, "I don't feel like I have to play." He asked me why. And I said, "I'm a smaller dude. I don't think I'm going to get much bigger than I am." So, and he was like, "I'm a smaller guy." He's like, "And, I'm getting ready to go back to the WWC because you're giving these bullshit place to see it. You're afraid to get in. Don't guys." Shane, the first guy to really call me into. There's another guy that I don't know that learning tree too. I learned a
Yeah.
lot from Adam Cole. I learned a lot from Steve Torino, Eddie Kingston. Jimmy Rave was, I think, the first to really take me and say, "Hey, I see something in you. Stop being afraid of it." He's like, "Whatever it is, let it out." He said, "Because I see it. It's right there." He said, "But you're holding it back." He said, "As long as you hold that back, you're holding yourself back." So Jimmy was like one of the biggest influences that I've had in wrestling. I was able to learn a lot from Raven. I was able to learn a lot from DDP. Booker T. I've learned in the 6 months I work with him. I feel like I've learned a plethora of knowledge that's going to benefit me and future generations going forward. Murder One, and William Huckabee are the two that I think are the most special, and Eric Royal as well up in North Carolina. Um, Huckabee took me out on the road my first show. He took me to Tennessee to work for NWA Smoky Mountain. Um, a lot of the OGs in North Carolina told me not to deal with Huck. Anyone who's ever been around Huck could probably understand why that is.
Yeah.
Um, but I said, this guy's willing to take me out on the road, and I had to choose between staying at my home promotion, CWF, or going on the road with Huck. I chose Huck. He's never done me dirty. Murder One put me in the ring with some of the best wrestlers in the world off of the strength of, "I believe in you and I see something in you and I want to help cultivate that." And Eric Royal, the journey doesn't start without him. We worked together overnight stocking at Walmart. I did not know there was local wrestling schools. I thought you had to go like to LA or New York for that. He told me about CWF, and because of that, I'm here now. So if I had
Mm,
to pick the top three, it would be Eric Royal, Murder One, and William Huckabee for sure.
mm.
Joe, I want to ask you about move forward to 26 for a second. Jeremy shared a list with me of folks you wanted to wrestle in 26. It had TJP, Cedric Alexander, and Minoru Suzuki. Could you say a little bit about those three choices?
Cedric, we
Yeah.
started together. That's my brother. I love Ced. We've had many a match. I got to see him blow up William Huckabee in West Virginia, which will always be a moment I hold dear in my heart. Huck will say he didn't get blown up, but he did. Cedric had him gassed. To see Cedric go from a North Carolina guy to the curtain call from Triple H after his match that he had, um, that dude's inspired me more than anybody else. And he's still the same cat. He hasn't changed up. He's still the same dude. And to be able to put what he's learned against what I've learned in our different paths would be an epic for me. Minoru Suzuki, he's the OG. I will never
Yeah.
be able to wrestle Misawa. I will never be able to wrestle Kobashi, but I can wrestle Suzuki. And I feel like he's an unrecognized pillar for what he does. So I feel like, being able to learn a little bit from him would be dope. And then TJP, my sister in the hierarchy, Aria, is married to TJ. And he came and did a match with, I believe it was Chip at AWE.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him in PWG. And the fact that he was so young, it inspired me because this dude was so good at such a young age. They call him the young OG. And that dude, him and Davey Richards on the indie scale is what made me say, I can do this. These guys can do it. And, with Davey flaking on every match we get booked together in, I feel
Yeah.
like if I can at least get in the ring with TJ, if I have time to, that would be great. So yeah, that's the reason for those three names.
Thanks.
I guess I'll throw out a little bit of a fun one. This is one that some people have wanted me to ask people that I've had on my own show sometimes. I'll let you kind of pick which direction you want to go with it. Let's say whether you're still an active wrestler or not, if you were starting your own promotion, either how would you want to set it up, or what name a handful of people you would want to book from day one to start it off.
I've seen the stress this caused Dylan and Murder once. So I don't know if I want to talk about the setup, but if we're
Yeah.
fantasy booking, I would definitely have Carly Bravo there, because he's a star. I would definitely have Alex Kane there because he's a star. If we're talking Pantheon members, O'Shea Edwards is an attraction. I feel like Big Ben Bishop is an attraction as well. Um, Justin McKenzie, every promotion needs their Jeff Hardy archetype, and I feel like he fulfills that role very well. Shit, I would have Huck there not to wrestle, God no, but just to be that veteran presence in the locker room. Same with Murder One. Uh, I would have Top Team there in Northside, um, for the tag divisions. Uh, man, I would treat Jeter like he's the Undertaker of that promotion. Whenever
Yeah.
you see Big Jeter, it's some the shit's about to go down. I would try to talk Corey Chavis into coming back for a little bit. John Davis, as well. He's still killing it, but I feel like Rain Man 420 still got a little bit of steam left, whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. Seth Alexander, Caleb Conley, Chip Day, uh, Priscilla Kelly. I still feel like it's one of the best female talents in the world. Um, Savannah Evans, Delonce Royal. I bring in Ace because Ace is a creative madman. And
Yeah.
just the shit he can think of is just so out of the box that it doesn't make sense to you, but eventually the more you hear it, the more you like it, whether it makes sense to you or not. I would bring Amy Haven in too. Man, Caden Uden is getting better. There's so many guys that I would book, and even if they're not booked in so quote unquote prominent roles, there wouldn't be a prominent role if I started a promotion. It wouldn't be centered around the belt. It would be centered around bragging rights. So if you ever played the game Def Jam Fight from New York,
Oh
it's
yeah.
all about bragging rights and who's the baddest. For me, I'm a transplant of the '90s. I don't care about accolades. I care about being the baddest. Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan were the baddest. Mike Tyson was the baddest. Michael Jackson was bad. So my whole thing is, you can win a belt. I know a lot of champions, but they ain't bad. I could beat the shit out of him in the alley in a dark night. You know, I'm not worried about that. I want I want someone who's like bad to wear the mantle, whatever the mantle is. So that would be if I ever ran a promotion into something like that. I never will, so I don't want that stress in my life. But it's a good thought.
For sure. For sure. So Joe, one of my favorite throwaway lines in Starship Troopers is close to the end. Um, these like young new soldiers come up to the guys that we've been following the whole time, and one of them looks over at his friend and just goes, "We're the old men now, Ace." Meaning like, holy shit, when did this happen? When did we go from being the upstart to being the standard and being the guy who was in charge? Now that you, I'll just say this, Joe, whatever this means, it means. Whatever it doesn't, it doesn't. If there's a Mount Rushmore of guys currently still wrestling on the Georgia scene, you're on that Mount Rushmore, right? And so when you look around, um and you think you're a philosophical guy, you talk to guys like Murder One, who again thinks a lot about this shit. um the guys that continue to sort of put themselves into the breach, once more into the breach and all of that, right?
Hmm.
So as you're looking now, um what are your thoughts about wrestling? Like, obviously it's gone through on a national level huge transformation. On the Georgia scene, it's gone through a huge transformation. I was telling Larry, I'm looking at this list of nominees, and I go like, I don't know who half these motherfuckers are. And that's not a slight. I think that's a great thing, right? One of the intents of the awards was, behind the scenes for Larry and I, was it's time for young guys to take this fucking thing over. We wanted the young cats to be the ones who were voting, not fucking fans. Let me throw that out there. Never fans. I will fuck fans. But as you're looking on the scene, what's wrestling gonna be? It's almost impossible to predict, right? They're using AI to book WWE, for fuck's sake. I can't even believe I'm uttering those words, right? But what's the next evolution, right? Or is there one? Or I don't know. When you talk about the scene and wrestling, to the people that know what the fuck they're talking about, Murder Ones, the Chip Days, whoever else you're rapping with, right? What are the thoughts? What are the things that you guys are saying that maybe people aren't really saying publicly? But to me, that's where a lot of the truth is hidden there, or the potential truth. What are you talking about right now? What do you see? What do you think is going to happen?
I think that wrestling is about to go the way of Terminator 2.
Mm,
Um, Especially with the advent of AI, maybe not so dramatically where Judgment Day happens. But I feel like there's going to have to be a guy who is standing against the mechanization of pro wrestling, where there is no soul. It's this iron shell that is to resemble the human condition, but is completely devoid of the human condition that can't be bargained or reasoned with. That's
mm,
bereft of any of that human quality that creates the connection. Because wrestling is a connection. If there's no
yeah,
connection or the connection is severed, then I mean I can go watch 50 Cent's Power on Stars if for that. I don't need to have a connection to that. But
yeah,
wrestling, what makes it special is the connection. So I feel like the industry needs a John Connor to stand against, the evil conglomerate that is now using AI to produce the things it comes up with. Not so much that it's evil because, it's feeding a lot of people that I do like and admire, but there needs to be that sort of guy who is, the standard now that's going to stand against what wrestling has become to bring it back
to what we knew it as. And maybe it's a niche thing. Maybe it's a grassroots movement at first. Maybe it doesn't catch, steam like it should. But there does need to be some sort of a central figure that's like, this is how I do things. And I'm not basing me off of what the machine tells me I'm supposed to be as a pro wrestler. You couldn't churn someone like me out of a factory. You couldn't create something like me in 12 weeks and call me a pro wrestler. Something like me was I was born this way and I added skills and traits along my journey. When I came into wrestling, the only thing that I added to what I am was moves and things in the ring. I'm still the same person I've always been. I've never changed that. I just, threw a new name on it. So we need someone that's not afraid to say, I don't like the way things are going, or maybe think the way things are going isn't punk rock enough for me. Maybe it's just not that connection. I need that connection. So I feel like the wrestling world is going to start to burn, figuratively, of course, and there's going to be a need for something new, something fresh. And you can't create that in the factory. You have to go and you have to find that. And hopefully, whenever they find it, it's punk rock enough to say, this is me and this is how you're going to take me. You're not going to change me. This is my message, and I'm not going to change that. There's just too many guys that are willing to, devolve into, assimilating into this machine to say they're a part of it. There are not enough guys to say, I don't want to be a part of the machine. I want to blow the fucking machine up. So we need someone with that John Connor devil may care attitude that's going to say, the machine is great, but now it's time for something else more organic to take its place. That's what I feel like is needed. I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think wrestling is going to change much because guys are seeing the money. And unless you're a real artist, unless you've done theater like I have, unless you write poetry and you're really tuned into the soul of things, you could read Shakespeare. I feel Shakespeare. It's two different things. A lot of these guys, they think, they don't feel, to quote Bruce Lee. They're focusing on the finger and not the heavens that the finger is pointing at. So we have to have some guy that's going to come along and say, I don't feel this. It can't be me. I think I got 1 or 2 good years left. But there has to be somebody and I say punk rock because that is the spirit. There has to be, a Tupac, devil may care, rebel. There has to be someone that's like, I could make a lot of money doing this, or I could tell you the truth. And I can risk great harm to myself or my credibility in this case, but I'm going to tell you the truth. That's a pipe dream, but that's what I feel like is needed.
Yeah.
To me, you're
Agreed.
talking about a force similar to going back to the 90s when, to me, wrestling was so dead and I was really becoming uninterested. And then ECW came along, and in a different way, Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the South, and got me really interested in it again when I had no interest in the Major League Wrestling at that time.
Definitely. The indies is that we have to protect, because I tell a lot of younger guys, all the ideas that you see up top are coming from down here. I was told by guys signed that they watched PWG, they watched Ring of Honor, and that's where they got ideas
Clearly
from.
they did.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, and I love Obafemi. He seems like a solid dude. There's no way he didn't see somebody rocking the beads and said, that'd be a good flourish to add. So they watch what we do, and instead of us being mad about it, we should feel like, okay, that's validation.
Agreed.
Well, if you're going to take this, let me create something that you can't take because the machine is not going to allow you to. So that spirit of ECW, like all my OGs are either former ECW or connected with someone from ECW. And that's the reason why I came up the way I came up with the punk rock attitude and sensibility, because my OGs did as well. The Smoky Mountain attitude, I connect that back to New Jack as much as I do ECW. I've got stories that I've heard from New Jack where his goal was to create a riot. His goal going in, cutting the promo was, I want to get these white people mad enough that they fucking chase me out of town. And to anyone else listening, that's like, man, you're in Tennessee in some podunk town. But that's the type of spirit that I latched on to because it's raw.
Yes.
And wrestling has no raw visceral nature anymore. It's all just commercialized, and make your money by all means, but there's a reason why Rakim is an indie artist now. There's a reason why Nas started his own label. There's a reason why DMX was indie before he passed away. It's because all these major conglomerates kill art. And if you want to be an artist, sometimes, a piece of paper is a cage. So hopefully some of these young guys realize that I can make money or I can make art. And when you make art that's so great, the money will come. So hopefully we get more artists and less wrestlers.
Yes. Joe, I'm just going to say this last thing, and I swear to God, I'm going to hopefully shut up. But like the things that you're talking about, like the rebellious spirit and, the outlaw vibe that Larry talked about. At the end of the day, let me put this caveat on it for young wrestlers. Do you absolutely find out who you are and express that? Absolutely. But if you ain't shit, it's not going to mean a whole lot. If you don't know, if you're not reading a book, you're wasting our time. I don't need another guy who can debate long and loud about Stranger Things. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not saying don't watch TV. I'm saying there are places to draw knowledge. There are places to get educated, and he's going to get mad that I'm going to bring his name up, but I think I just want to put a fine point on this, right? So, like Jeff G. Bailey, right? You don't have anybody like that nowadays. Like it's just a unique set of circumstances. A guy who grew up in that sort of ECW era, who when syndicated television still mattered and all this other stuff, right? But I was thinking about how like Jeff was basically part of the main event scene for the same promotion for like 2 decades, unheard of, right? And Jeff and I were talking like a year ago. We talk all the time, but like a year ago, I noticed he had slipped into this sort of retired life, right? He's got means, he's got money. And so he once kind of flexed on me. Now, we're good friends, so it's whatever. It's guys flexing on each other. But he was just like, I'm the coolest guy you know, right? Because he was able to buy all this like Spider-Man related shit and, like whatever. And I mean, anybody who knows me knows, like, fuck, I work 100 hours a week, 4 different restaurants. I threw myself into this shit, and that's what I do, right? And I went, Jeff, I'm not going to say I'm cooler than you necessarily, but I will say this. You can't be cool and be a consumer. You have to be a creator. And right now, you ain't shit. Like, there's nothing cool about sitting there and buying shit to be delivered to your house. That doesn't make cool. And I mean, I'm not saying it was the spark for it, but Jeff started getting out there. Fuck it. I'm going to I love deathmatch. I'm going to go fucking commentate these shows. And he had a lot of anxiety about it. I'm like, Jeff, what are you going to be? Are you going to just be some guy that talks about how great I used to be? Or are you going to go out and be great? Are you going to let these deathmatch guys who grew up fucking watching you be a part of, are you going to share, in other words?
Yeah.
And so let me put everything Joe said is right. But I will say, if there's no there, spare us all, right? Just save it. We don't need people who, I always said that artists are arrogant because at the end of the day, they're saying, what I do is so significant that you should be connecting to it, right? That's an inherently arrogant act. And the only way I care about you is if you can justify that arrogance. Are you so interesting? Are you so smart? Are you so learned? What are you into? If you had to have a discussion with me or Joe or Larry or whoever, like what would we be talking about? Because those are the conversations I remember at PCW, not just about wrestling, but what are the fucking guys into? I mean, I remember when Dragon Ball Z was hitting and like all those guys were talking about it. I'm like, cool. So what are you going to take about this shit that you love so much, that you love watching so much? How are you taking it and using it out there? And they looked at me like I was a fucking alien. They're like, what? I'm like, I'm asking. You love the shit. You emotionally connect to it. Art is connecting to other people emotionally. How are you going to use it? Because if you're not using it, you're another dumb fuck. Don't be a dumb fuck. Be a person of substance. I'm not saying you got to read the books that I read or whatever, but I'm just saying if you're not attempting to give us what is the package that you're presenting that we're going to put up with your rebellious spirit. I'll put up with almost any level of rebellion. There's a million examples of it. Like Jeter is a great example. He's got something special. He's also a pain in the ass to deal with, and I'm glad I dealt with him because it was like because you could get magic out of a guy like that, right? But but if you know the man Jeter, if you know who he is, then you know, like that's a fucking real dude. That's a real dude. I can tell you a bunch of stories about Jeter. And some guys, I will admit, when I met them, when I've come to the Georgia scene and I talk to some of these guys, I'm like, I don't get the feeling that there's a there, you know? And if that's you, fuck, you only get one time around this motherfucker.
Right.
Like, use that brain, use that heart, um, connect to things that matter and allow it to change you a little bit. So that way you can put something out in the world that's compelling. That's all I want out of wrestling right now. I want to be compelled. I don't give a fuck if Drew McIntyre wins a title because he deserves it. I hate the word deserve. There is no deserve. There's just I feel it or I don't feel it. And whatever it takes for you to get to the point where you have a gravity that I get pulled in by, that's what I want. I want to feel that gravity. So be that thing of substance that's got a gravitational pull of its own. And there's no easy answer. I don't think I think that's why I was so excited when Larry said we're talking to Joe because I was like, that's a guy who understands nuance, but that's a guy that also will just fucking he the smartest guys are able to communicate complex ideas in a way that it's easily understood, right? And Joe using these basketball analogies, to me, it's the easiest way. It's like, cool, Dennis Rodman, I get exactly what he's talking about, right? The ability to communicate um, and having that substance and that gravitational pull, um, it's invaluable. Joe, I can't thank you enough, man. I don't really have a lot to do with wrestling, but I love it, right? I did it for a long time. I still care about it. So I was definitely glad that you were the guy willing to talk. Because even if it's the cliche, even if it's just one cat who listens to this and goes, "Fuck," I can, and it makes a discernible change inside somebody, even if it's one person, completely worth it. Because
Yeah.
I guarantee you, there's nobody watching Raw right now that's getting inspired. Maybe in a superficial way, but not in a way that I would find interesting in 10 years. Like, oh, yeah, I watched this Raw, and then 10 years down the road, it made me. It's not happening. And that's what I want, is I want guys who are truly inspirational. And I think Joe's one of those people.
So I guess before we get out of here, Joe, is there? I hate the word advice because it's overused the same way Stephen was talking about a lot of other terms. Is there a last bit of knowledge or something you've even said tonight that you want to expand even more on, that you want to leave people with? Because as he said, whether it's one person, whether it's 100, 1,000, however many it is, somebody's going to watch this, and that light switch is going to go on, and they're going to realize they can be way better than they are. Is there any last thing you want to leave people with?
To expand on what Steve just said, the Dragon Ball Z thing. I was one of those cats that watched that at 8 or 9 years old, and I was so moved by that show that I said, the way Vegeta is built physically, I'm a build a body like that. because I feel like
Yeah.
power, and I did that. I mean, it took me 15 years, but now when I see myself, I'm like, man, I actually did that. My friend who from back home in North Carolina, he came to one of the Ziggy shows in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for PWX, and he came up to me. He said, "Man, you really became the creator wrestler because I created a wrestler on one of the." This cat had a bunch of tattoos and he had long hair, and it's like I remember him saying, "That's what you're trying to be," and I became that, and it was so cool to him. So for me, I don't watch wrestling for inspiration because I feel like that's insipid. I
Mm.
watch I watch movies. I read books. You know, I'm a Shakespeare guy, Edgar Allan Poe. There's a book I'm reading now by Ellison called "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream."
Ooh,
Really
love it.
compelling. Watch movies. Joe Black came from a Brad Pitt movie. Like literally, it's called Meet Joe Black. You know, it's about the Grim Reaper, and my whole aesthetic that I wanted to do in wrestling was the rider of the pale horse, but I figured out a roundabout way to do it. So I came up with Joe Black. That came from a movie. The way I move is similar to the way Jack Sparrow moves. I watched Pirates, and then I heard that he got that from Keith Richards. So imagine an actor like Johnny Depp getting inspiration from a rock star. Now, if Johnny
Right.
Depp watched movies, maybe he would have stole something from De Niro or Pacino. Pacino walks a certain way. Or he could say, I really like Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. I'm going to borrow something from him that it's common, is unique because no one ever said, I'm gonna look at Keith Richards and the way he walks and the way he saunters about and take from that. If you look at Heath Ledger, he didn't just read comics of the Joker because Jack Nicholson did the best comic book Joker there will ever be. He became
Yes.
something completely different. He became an anarchist. He embodied the spirit of what the character was. He didn't become the character. He embodied the spirit of what the character was created for. Watch media outside of wrestling. There's nothing you're going to learn from
Yeah.
watching. You already know how to do the moves. You can't do a double moonsault. There's nothing you're going to do technically on that mat that I haven't seen Benoit do better, or Kurt Angle, or Eddie Guerrero, or Shawn Michaels. But what you can do
Yes.
is be the best you that you can be. The only uniqueness any of us have in this world is whoever the fuck we are. There's never going to be another you down to the DNA. You are inherently the most unique thing in the world. So why not take whatever makes you you and figure out a way to frame it? Now, I can make a picture. I can take a picture and it's the best picture ever. But if it's just laying about with other pictures or if it's just in a photo collage, it loses its, whatever makes it special. But if I put it in an ornate frame, and I put it on the mantelpiece in the center of the living room. Even if you don't understand what the picture is, you know it's something about it that's special. Find a frame. Whoever you are, frame it. Watch a movie, read a book, and pick from these things and combine them into something. Joe Black is literally Alan, the person, turned up without inhibitions, but framed in the way that Jack Sparrow moves, the way that the Joker has an idea about things, how nothing is serious to him. And it's a bunch of literary, characters that was created by Homer or reading, the Divine Comedy, and all of these things combined with guys like Wolverine and Batman and Dragon Ball Z characters. And I
Yes.
came with this. So if you're into those things, that's cool. Find out a way to make it benefit you in wrestling. Wrestling is boring. The characters in wrestling is what makes wrestling exciting. Dusty Rhodes, you don't remember him from the things he did in the ring. You remember him from being who he is. I can name all these Benoit matches that I watched, and I think it's the dopest match ever. But I can't tell you a moment from Benoit as a character that I can point to and be like, well, yeah, this was the moment, but I can tell you about that. I can tell you that about Undertaker or Shawn Michaels or Eddie Guerrero. There are moments in character work. So find out how to be a character. I know a lot of guys that can do a lot of things and you've never heard about them. So
Yeah.
be a guy that I've heard about, and that's not through moves. You're not better than Cedric Alexander. You're not better than TJP. You're not better than these guys. The way you become better and the best version of yourself is find out what makes you tick, find a voice, and once you find a voice, say something that has some fucking meaning with that voice.
Yes.
And then you'll be somebody.
Absolutely.
That's my advice.
Love it.
Tremendous. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Larry, is this a good time to wrap it up?
I think it is.
Cool. Well, Larry, can you talk about what do we got coming up as far as the awards go?
Brimstone Tavern, Sunday night, this coming Sunday, 5 p.m. red carpet, 6 p.m. showtime.
Ooh,
Uh, Nominees and presenters get in free. I think general admission is $10 if you that does not apply to you. So I hope people come out. I think it's going to be a good time. They have
right
been
on.
previously. It'll be interesting and it will be different than the previous ones. I can guarantee you that.
Oh
Not
yeah.
saying yeah.
Maybe
It's
I'll get
nice.
seated at the same table I did last time.
Who'd you sit with last time, Jeremy? Who'd you sit with?
I sat with Murder One and Joe Black and the Kenway and Carmen the announcer and yeah, it was a fun table. For one, they kept
Hell
winning,
yeah.
and two, they're just actual fun people. Like you're saying, they're not just wrestler stick. It's like they're actually fun people to sit at a table with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Joe, what do you got coming up that you want to talk about?
I got Pro South on Friday, of course.
Yeah.
For those of you not in the know, they stream every Friday. Watch some of these young guys. They are pretty damn good. They're coming into their own. They're learning. And then Saturday, I got Premiere in Carrollton. I wrestle Alexander Lev again for the Southern Honor title. So that's going to be fun. And then Sunday, I will be at the awards dressed to the nines, and
Hey.
All
I'll be
right.
sipping on some rum and coke, and hopefully, I win something.
Nice. Well, excellent. Gentlemen, Jeremy, it's a pleasure to meet you. Always a pleasure to talk to Joe. Always good to see Larry. Um, I don't know, man. Now I understand my father more than I ever have. The older I get, the more sentimental I become. For those of you who've been sort of inquiring on the fringes about me, just know whatever I'm doing in my life, I'm more Stephen Platinum than I've ever fucking been. And imagine the people who have to encounter me encountering Stephen Platinum cold. That's what they're getting. And let me tell you, I told Jeff this years ago, and I urge everybody listening to this and who's on this to be the same way. I told Jeff at one point, I've been I've been depositing into the bank of pro wrestling for decades. I'm withdrawing now. And I urge that of all of you as well. Withdraw from this motherfucker and use it in your life, in the business, whatever the fuck. Because ultimately, that's what it's there for. And if you don't take it out, they're just going to hold on to it. So fuck them. Go rob that motherfucker bank if you have to. Pro wrestling isn't dead yet. It's not dead until the young people allow it to be. Please don't allow it to die. Please don't allow it to become something so unrecognizable. Like Joe alluded to, there's nothing in pro wrestling right now that you can't get somewhere else better. So find the thing that can make wrestling in some way the best at a certain thing that it can be. That's what I would say. In any case, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Joe. Go to that award show. The older you get, the more things like that actually matter. Getting together with the people that do what you do. It's a very unique, again, we use that word a lot, but it's a unique thing. Your peers voting to acknowledge you, the nominees getting that mention. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing in a business that often doesn't encourage those things. So go celebrate with your peers, go have a drink for me, and God, I got to show up to one of these motherfuckers. Not that anybody, not that a ton of, less and less people would care, but I would care more and more, and that's the part that matters. I just have to be able to squeeze myself into a green jacket and get over there. So.
You want to sign us off, Steve?
Absolutely. For Jeremy, and thanks so much for running the shebang, Jeremy.
Yes.
Bang up job, bang up job. So for Jeremy, for Larry Goodman, and for the great Joe Black, this is Stephen Platinum, and we'll see you on another edition of The Tipping Point.